All right, so we got a few people in here, so we'll get started. This is Cardano RealFi. It's a Twitter space where we talk about DeFi and RealFi. If you don't know what RealFi is, kind of one of our projects we're talking about today is RealFi, where we're connecting the blockchain technology to real estate. So it's going to be pretty interesting to talk about this project. Yeah, so Gokey, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. First of all, my name's Craig, and I'm the founder. And I really appreciate you having me on. I really enjoy the Cardano RealFi space and try to listen when I can. I've been looking forward to this for a while. Um, I'm pretty obsessed with the idea of RealFi. It's really one of the things that drew me to Cardano in the first place. I've always been interested in crypto and blockchain type projects, sort of as you know, for what they are, new types of payment systems and new types of money and kind of a new asset class. But what gets me really excited is connecting that to real world applications, solving real world problems. So my background, can you still hear me okay? Sorry, I dropped my phone.
Yeah, you sound good.
Okay, cool. My background is in real estate and construction, so kind of about as real as it gets in the world. When you're putting roofs over people's heads and connecting them to the ground. So basically, the Gokey Project came about. When I kind of saw a problem that has kind of just been sticking in my mind for a really long time. And basically, it's kind of this idea that a lot of people are not able to get into purchasing property, especially younger people. A lot of people like who don't fit the mold necessarily of kind of what's kind of a machine, like a very systemized way of buying and financing and transferring homes. And more, there are a lot of people who maybe don't fit that mold very well. One, either they don't, the price of real estate in the markets where they live is kind of outpacing wage growth and people's ability to save for things like down payments, which is like a very real phenomenon that's happening. And but also, there are a lot of people nowadays who maybe have accumulated some wealth or some greater means and value in their life through maybe crypto, or maybe they're a gig worker who doesn't necessarily have the 9-to-5 job for 2 years that kind of fits the mold of a traditional mortgage that a mortgage lender wants to see. So, I've just always kind of been curious about like, well, I wonder if there is a way for blockchain technology to kind of help alleviate this problem. So, there have been people who've been working on securitizing real estate and tokenizing real estate for quite a while now, and that's really interesting and that's really cool, and it does solve a problem in kind of the investor class, people who want access to real estate investments but don't can't necessarily do it through traditional methods. But it definitely does not solve a problem of like people just trying to buy a home to live in or to keep kind of a roof over their head and to kind of have that kind of key piece of financial security that a lot of generations, my generation, I'm in my mid 40s, and my parents' generation, they all had much better opportunities to buy a home and like kind of have that keystone piece of financial security in their life. So it kind of gets into some greater issues around like affordable housing and the economy as a whole. But that's really kind of where the idea started. And that's still kind of the core principle of the project and a core problem we're trying to address. But in addressing that and getting more into the Cardano ecosystem and learning more about DeFi, you know, there's always been an understanding that like the real estate markets are pretty antiquated in a lot of ways. And there's tons of room for innovation and new ways of doing things. So it became pretty clear that, you know, while the helping people own a home, buy a home is a great, is an important piece of all of this. Like there's a lot of other directions Gokey can expand into over time, and really excited about all of it. But sometimes when I think about it, it can be a little overwhelming. So we're just trying to take it step by step right now. And, you know, we're a very early stage project and just really out there trying to tell people about what we're trying to do, attract talent to the project, whether it's development talent, marketing talent, and people who want to maybe be an end user of Gokey. And it's been pretty exciting. We've met a lot of great people, and a lot of people are really intrigued about what we're trying to do, because as far as I can tell, no one out there has ever done anything quite like this. So here we are.
Yeah, when it comes to housing, that's definitely one thing that people have noticed, right? Like housing prices has just been increasing like crazy. And at this point, for somebody to purchase a home, it takes quite a bit of capital. And I feel like most people back in the day used to think like if they had $1 million, they could buy like a pretty nice home. But now, depending on the location, you can barely even afford anything. But I'm also like curious about what you were saying. So with Gokey, this Gokey token, and like how that links up, because you're saying it's a little bit different than the tokenized real estate that a lot of people have been talking about.
Right, right. So, you know, ultimately what we're trying to do with Gokey is create a new way for kind of owner-occupier type individuals to buy a property. And then kind of in parallel with that, we've created a token that we think we can develop into really the ideal kind of money to facilitate those transactions. So, you know, just to kind of circle back to the idea of real estate securities and security tokens, fundamentally different in the way that, you know, I know a lot of the spaces we've been in RealFi, seems like 75% of them, we end up talking about the Howey test at some point, which, you know, if you're new to that, it's really kind of the test that the SEC utilizes to kind of make a quick determination if something may or may not be a security, which a security is a regulated financial instrument. And you can't just issue a security without letting the SEC know and filing the appropriate paperwork. And so that's really, security tokens are being used for like more like institutional or investment grade properties. So something like an apartment building. Like let's say you and I wanted to buy a $10 million apartment building, but each of us only had like $500,000. We need to get some more money somewhere. So basically we will go out and talk to our family and friends and outside individuals and companies and be like, hey, would you want to invest in this project to help us build our form the capital we need to buy this project? And, you know, we could do it the old fashioned way where we just create an LLC and we basically divide the LLC into 100 or 1,000, you know, quote unquote shares that are all basically fungible. You know, a share is a share, and, you know, we raise the money that way. Or we could, you know, do this kind of next level thing where we tokenize those individual shares. So like each security token may represent one share. They're a little more liquid, easier to exchange between each other because the liquidity, even in securities, in real estate type securities, especially like a private type offering, like I've described, it's not very liquid. There's usually not a secondary market. You have to maybe reach out to other investors in the project and say, hey, would you want to buy me out because I need the money for something? But what we're talking about with Gokey really is like tokenizing a home, and beyond that, tokenizing individual property rights represented by the title of the home. So the key difference here being like, so what we're doing with Gokey is not a security because it doesn't rely on the efforts of an outside like project or deal sponsor like you or I would have had that role in the previous example. So this would be basically, I want to buy my house from you, and basically we would create a token, an NFT that represents the fee simple ownership of that home. But within that, if you were to look at through my light paper, I've described this concept of like real estate as a bundle of rights. So, you know, really when you buy a house, it's not like necessarily buying, you know, I don't know, a guitar or something where you buy the guitar and you own the guitar. Like real estate's a little more complicated than that. So you're buying actually like a set or a bundle of rights that allow you to do different things with that real estate. Like you can rent it to someone, you can build onto it, you can sell it, you can exclude other people from getting on the property and things like that. So when I really started digging into trying to figure out how to solve some of these problems that I'll describe a little more, I realized, like, you know, you can really tokenize each of those rights individually. Like you can tokenize the rights individually with NFTs, and you can also tokenize the rights over a certain period of time. So let's say, for example, I want to rent a house from you. We could basically create one NFT that represents my right to live in the house for 1 year. Like basically it's a rental agreement, but it starts looking kind of like this token that is, you know, more liquid, more easily transferred. Now that doesn't sound that compelling, but when you start thinking of all the ways you can make that more granular and more easy to use, like you can really start to see how you can start to create a lot more liquidity and different options for buying and selling in ways that aren't just all or nothing. You know, like one thing I like to say when I'm describing the project is that there's kind of this void between renting real estate and owning real estate. And there's just never been, you know, it's just kind of always been like, that's the way it's done. And no one's really thought differently about it. But, you know, there's that space there. Like maybe there are ways we can work in between those two spaces to give people opportunities to buy or sell in different ways.
So for these NFTs, are they going to be holding most of the data? Is it on chain or is it like a hosted off chain thing? Like how exactly does that work out?
Well, one of the best examples I could give, and I would probably need to circle back a little bit into kind of how this idea evolved, just to provide some context. But if you think about, so here's kind of real world example from my life. So at one point, I lived up in the mountains in Colorado. I bought a house, loved it, but about 6 months later, I decided, you know what? I'm actually going to move to Denver and go to grad school there. So wanted to learn more about real estate development, finance, all that. I had just bought this house. So I had some friends, you know, fellow ski and raft bums that I rented the house to. But when I moved to Denver, I was like, man, I'd really like to buy a house here. And I had really no means to do that. Like I had a brand new mortgage on a house in the mountains. So no bank is really going to loan money to someone with that much debt at the time, especially a student who wasn't necessarily even working full time. So, but I was like, you know what, there's got to be a way. And that's really when I started to learn about the idea of like a lease purchase option or a purchase option. So I started looking into it and I'm like, dude, this is the ideal pretty much path for anyone who's renting that wants to buy a home. I mean, at that time it was really limited to the home that you know you were renting, but you could work out with the homeowner and say, look, I want to rent this house from you, but under the condition that in 2 years you will sell this house to me for X amount of dollars. Okay. So the interesting thing about this is that when you enter into a lease purchase or lease purchase option type arrangement, as a renter, you can kind of build this form of what I call soft equity. So basically, you know, a typical lease purchase is going to look something like this. So you are leasing the house. You maybe pay a little bit bigger deposit because you're getting something that's pretty valuable, an option to buy this property. So when you enter into this, like you're going to have a strike price where the price you're going to buy the house. But if, let's say, I'm going to buy a house from you for $200,000 or have an option to buy it at that price, and then when that 2-year time period is up, the house is worth, let's say, 220. So in a way, I've kind of, as a renter, without even having my name on the title, but per our agreement, basically I have $20,000 worth of equity in that house. So basically, when we have this agreement, I mean, it's pretty ideal if a person wants to buy that house. So the thing about these types of arrangements, it takes kind of a lot of trust. It's actually a pretty old school way of doing things, but over the years, there have been kind of some bad actors who've offered these kind of deals to people, and they've kind of gotten this kind of reputation as a little bit of a sort of a subprime type thing. And, you know, mortgage bankers and realtor lobbyists have said, no, you don't want to do that. You want to go through us. We're the only people you can trust. And so they've kind of fallen out of favor, even though it's a great deal structure, in my opinion. So you just don't really see them that often. But if you can find a way to take out the trust aspect and for both sides to know that like they can't be rugged, because think about it this way, like say I have an option to buy this house from you for 200,000 and it's worth 220,000, and after years I come to you and I say, hey, I'm going to exercise my right to buy the house. You're like, well, no, it's actually worth 10% more. I'm not going to sell it to you. Sorry, screw you. If you don't like it, you can sue me, whatever. That's a terrible situation to be in, right? So, but if we had a smart contract that said, look, after 2 years, I've made all my payments on time, and now it's time to exercise the option, like the smart contract will administer our agreement and assign the NFT of the ownership of the property to me. So it kind of makes it into more of a trustless type of transaction, which is really the core of what blockchain technology offers, right? So that's kind of why I feel like it's a really good fit for this type of application.
Yeah, I feel like anybody who's used CNFT has had that issue where people like try to sell like an NFT and then the price goes up because the floor price went up and then they just like cancel the sale. So like that sounds like the same exact thing. So
It
yeah,
man,
having a
it's
smart contract that locks people into these is a very interesting thing. And then we
yeah.
had Rohan step up and he has a question. Is that Rohan? Sorry.
Yes, Rohan. And I'd like to say hi to everybody. And the Gokey framework sounds very, very interesting. Uh, I show up in a lot of spaces, and I put out a white paper myself about no mortgages and why tokenized real estate, that technology should allow us to move to a place where we completely change our perspective of at least personal property investing. And basically, the mortgage has nothing to do with the value of the property. And so in my white paper, I spell out how basically we go to a system where it's about the property value. And if you made a list of all the variables that cause a property to increase or decrease in value, whether whether I or Jarhead or anybody else paid the mortgage on time has nothing to do with it. So our the idea that you're putting out there, Gokey, I definitely like it, and I'm interested because I'm not necessarily trying to do a product per se. I'm just trying to make sure that people understand that, because I went into a space yesterday and for the first time, there were people like, oh, hell no. I want people paying me a mortgage or paying me for their mortgage. And I was like, wow. So, and they were like, no, this ain't no new world we're going into. And they were actually right a little bit because it's actually a new platform and it's the world that we make it. So whether it's new or not really depends on us. And so that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, is because we have an opportunity to create something better, like this Gokey option. Um, and I'm just saying that even with the Gokey option, even with what most of the tokenized platforms are proposing, because there's a few of them out there who are close to being done. And so they've got their white papers out and they're pretty much putting together a system that's um it's probably a little better, but it's just so much of the old shit. And so when I saw that, that's when I wrote that article, paper, whatever you want to call it, and put it on GitHub. And it's and actually I'm inviting people to help solve some of the issues because there's lots of questions. I think it was you, Gokey, who were saying earlier that we have not even we don't even have anybody alive who was alive prior to mortgages forming in the 30s. And so we don't even, people don't even know how to view or perceive a world where mortgages are not the way we get property. And so I love your project. I don't know if your DM's open, but I'll DM you. I think I already followed you. And I have a background in tech, so I'm shilling a little bit. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to come up shilling, but I'm interested in the project, and I also would love for you to check out the white paper. And I know there's a few people in here who've heard me talk about it, and those that have heard me talk about it. If you got any criticisms, ideas, whatever, go to the GitHub and put in the issues, man. I'm not a GitHub guru, but it's set up. I've got about 6 or 7 issues in there, and planning on adding more because this is something that's going to have to be figured out. And I can't figure it out by myself, but we cannot let the powers that be just turn this opportunity into just another uh, mirror of IRL. So we have all these middlemen. So let's take advantage of it and get rid
Yeah,
of the middlemen.
it's
Make
definitely
profit.
great to hear different views and thanks for coming up and talking to us. Gokey, do you have anything to say to any of that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's awesome. I look at things in a lot the same way. I mean, first of all, yes, please DM me. They should be open. I will definitely read the white paper. I'm just a complete sponge for any and all information relating to other thoughts on how to kind of enter into this new world. But it's funny what you say about people not really having the context to think about a world prior to like the kind of standard mortgage system we have. It kind of reminds me of a quote. I think it was John Oliver, the comedian and late night show host, who was joking about crypto once. He's, to paraphrase, he said something like, "Hey, crypto, it's everything you don't understand about money combined with everything you don't understand about computers." And got a great laugh. But in some ways, I think about Gokey similarly. It's like, it's everything you don't understand about real estate combined with what you don't understand about crypto and NFTs in kind of a way. But yeah, I mean, it's a totally new thing, and I don't have it all figured out today. Hopefully, conversations like this will help us make really major strides in that direction.
And if I can, I just like to add my backstory of getting into the tokenized real estate is similar to yours. My wife and I actually entered a lease purchase option on a beautiful home. And when the pandemic hit, the price just shot out of the roof. But fortunately for us, we couldn't qualify for a mortgage, but we had excellent cash flow. So we were able to kind of entice the owners to, stay with the contract, basically, at the price that we had struck almost 2 years ago. And so, yeah, it was a sweet deal. We finally did qualify for a mortgage, but I started looking at, okay, well, if we can't qualify for a mortgage, how can I tokenize this property? I was on a mission. And then I found out that the platforms weren't quite up yet. If I wanted to do it, I'd have to be a pioneer and create an NFT and hope that I could draw some, some prospective investors. But your statement about the liquidity, if you read my white paper, there may be an answer in there, or something that leads to an answer, because that is a potential issue with investors. But I think if we change the perspective.
Okay, I'm just going to hop in here. I actually flipped real estate. I was a licensed mortgage broker, a licensed realtor. I'm a little confused on how this is happening here. I had a question. So, like, if you have a lease option to purchase a house, that's an official contract. That's admissible in court. No owner can go against that contract and take the house away from you, number one. Number two, I'm a little confused here on how Gokey operates. Sorry, I was getting a little frustrated there. Is Gokey like a lending service? So, like, I own rental property. I also own my own house. Are we doing just a contract service here for like sales contracts, or am I allowed to borrow against my rental property? Are you actually providing liquidity and mortgages? Like, can I borrow against my personal home or borrow against my rental property with Gokey?
Yeah, so those are great questions, and I, probably should have been a little more clear up front. What we're positioning Gokey as is really just a platform. So you and Rohan or anyone else can come to Gokey, and we will offer basically a smart contract library. Like, here's kind of a standard smart contract for a lease option, or here's a smart contract for an owner financing deal. And you and the other party you're working with comes to Gokey, and you basically fill out your own smart contract. So it's not that much different in a way from you guys just sitting down and filling out a paper contract, but it does offer added layer of security because it gets submitted and recorded on the Cardano ledger, as opposed to only like in your local jurisdiction or county. So we're not currently anticipating being involved as Gokey in any specific deal, providing money, providing property, or anything like that. Just a platform to allow.
It's a contract service. So you guys are basically like white labeling contracts for people to use in the.
Sorry, cut out on me a little bit there at the end, but I think what you're describing is pretty close to what we're offering.
Yeah, I don't know if they dropped out or not.
That's awesome, Gokey.
Thanks. Hey, question for Rohan, if you don't mind, real quick. Like you mentioned that you had to kind of sweet talk the owners of the counterparty you were with to on your lease purchase deal, and you were able to convince them to stay in the deal. So like a lot of people ask me, like, it's pretty clear what's the benefits for a renter or the buyer side of a deal. And, I think there are a few pretty clear and compelling benefits for the owner or seller side of the deal as well. But can you say kind of what encouraged them to stay in the deal with you, or did you have to threaten them to go to court?
No, I didn't get to finish earlier, but we actually came in literally as the pandemic was starting. So we had no idea what that was going to do to our businesses or anything. As our cash flow got a little lower, we were not able to qualify for a mortgage in the first 12 months. We had a 1-year lease purchase option because we were quite confident based on the previous 2 years that was going to be a piece of cake, right? And so it didn't happen. And the market, before we re-signed another 6 months, the market, it had gone up a little, but not too much yet. And so we ended up having to renew this contract twice. By the time we renewed it the second time, now the market was starting to look kind of enticing. And literally the home that we are in, the price that they could have gotten was easily 150 grand above what we had contracted to, right? And so we were fortunate enough that business had picked up, so we were able to just sweeten the pot and literally we just started throwing earnest money at them every month. And I'm not ashamed or afraid to say we were able to give them 10 grand extra a month. And that ended up helping us, actually, because when we finally did qualify for the mortgage, obviously our principal was down even more. And so we will be in that one of those type of equity positions. But I mean, right now, because of the way everything happened, literally there's an article on some publication today talking about how everybody is up right now in the black on their homes. And so there's a lot of potential liquid capital out there, even as the stimulus money dries up. And so anyway, yeah, that's how we were able to do that. But in the case that Gokey was mentioning, there are people who own property who are way more moneyed than the people that they're leasing to. And I actually agree with, I think that was Shock, whoever just spoke about, who said they were the real estate agent. There are people who will take you to court, and since they've got money to burn, it's hard to fight it. So even with the legally recognized contract, you could still get screwed in a lease purchase option by a well-moneyed lessee. So the blockchain definitely helps in that case.
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree more.
And did I answer your question, Subcritical?
Well, I think it was mostly Gokey that had the question for you there. But yeah,
Okay.
what Rare Bloom was talking about, I think a lot of us just don't know all the intricacies of these contracts and how people get out of them and things like that.
Exactly. Right. So yeah, we were blessed that we had the cash flow to keep the deal, because now we'll be closing in a couple of weeks, and the home value has gone way up, so we'll actually close with equity. And but everybody doesn't have that opportunity. But yes, I love this conversation, and I don't want to just stay on stage. I want to listen to what other people have to say as well, because I can talk.
Yeah, thanks for coming up. We do have some other hands, so we'll get through the other ones, and then yeah, if we do have time, we can circle back. And I would like to get more information about that whole side of it because I don't know much. So we got Shock. You got your hand up.
Hey guys, thank you. Gokey, yes, super excited about this possibility. I live in Costa Rica, and real estate here is a dodgy endeavor, to say the least. I know stories of parties that have bought a property, like 6 different parties have bought the same property, and the lawyer just took off with a good chunk of change. So having things on the blockchain could remedy that particular element. So, however, it's just like, I guess it's a kind of, is this platform that you're offering is based in the US or kind of the Western real estate laws? And have you looked at it? Is there an ideas of looking at it into an international compliance, as well as my question is whether or not this would be enforceable, because even though, like, I guess primarily both parties that are involved, the leasee, the buyer, the seller, they're all going to have to be into the idea of owning or dealing with crypto, which is still such a small percentage on a global level. So just kind of share your thoughts around that, if you may, please.
Yeah, you bet, Shock. Awesome question, and I can 100% relate, right? So like we talk all the time in crypto about how catastrophic it would be, to like for a chain to experience like a double spend. And like you described, it is very common in less developed real estate markets like Costa Rica, where properties are sold many times by bad actors, and obviously creates lots of problems. I can give you an example of at one point in my life, I was actually planning to move to Panama, right next door, and was going to start an ecotourism business. So I'm out in the rural area in Veraguas province, and I go into this small district, and like property rights there, like if you're in Panama City, like they have deeds and titles, and you can see ownership of various properties in, there's a digital database. You can go into one of their computers and see who owns what. But in these small districts, like it is very it's like prehistoric. Like you go in and you talk to your alcalde, and he basically has a big paper map on his desk with names written in certain parcels in pencil. And, you get the strong vibe of like, hey, if I gave this guy $5,000, he'd probably erase this guy's name and write my name in, right? So ideal application for blockchain. And just like in like Africa and other places where land tenure and land registries are not, a lot of it's not even online. It's very informal. Like there's a ton to gain from having it on chain. So initially, yes, Gokey is focused on the US market because that's where we are. That's the market we understand, and the regulatory environment we understand. I've been a real estate broker before. I get it. I know what I should be able to do and what I probably can't do. You know, I don't want to practice real estate without a license, or law, or lending. Like, those are all regulated activities. But yes, I would love to expand into jurisdictions like Costa Rica or anywhere else that's more based in like civil law versus English common law. So big distinction there. But, you know, the cool thing about it is, like, a smaller country like Costa Rica that's pretty forward thinking, they could decide, hey, you know what, we're going to recognize smart contracts legally, and we're going to recognize, we're going to put all our land title on the on chain. So, and it would actually be very beneficial for them to do that, because, you know, I've thought about buying land in Costa Rica, but I also know that, look, if I bought a farm in Costa Rica and I don't live there full time and squatters come in, it's next to impossible to get them off the land. Like, they basically own it for all intents and purposes. Like, I don't even have the right to use my own land. And that's even if it hasn't been sold to other people. So I totally get it. And I am 100% open to individuals and companies that are interested in this kind of thing in these other jurisdictions to partner with and see how we can come up with ways to tackle the problem.
Great. I was just going to offer that same sentiment that, you know, when you think that you're branching out into international waters or into Latin America or Costa Rica specific, I would definitely be interested in collaborating, or just, you know, pushing the pencil and the paper along a little bit further. That would be great. Good
Awesome.
luck with it. Good luck with it, and I'll stay posted. And I've already followed you, so we'll be in touch hopefully. Thank you.
Please, thank you.
Okay, then we have AI Love up here.
Hey, what's going on? Just wanted to give a shout out to everybody. Happy Black History Month. Subcritical, thank you for allowing me up here as a speaker. Rohan, I'm glad you found your place, man. Rohan is a dear friend of mine from the spaces, and you're talking about fractionalized real estate. Here's a question I have for you, Gokey, in pertention to the contract. So, like, the contracts that you guys are formulating, are they just based here in the United States, or is this something that is going to be implemented in other nations as well? Because a lot of the problem, I think, and I don't really think it's a problem. I think it's just needs adaptation, and it will come, because inevitably, I believe all this data and information is going to be placed on the blockchain. But as of right now, what kind of friction, or have you experienced any friction? What is that looking like on that end, legally?
You know, we haven't experienced friction just because I think it's so early, and we haven't really launched the full platform and what we're wanting to do. So basically, we've tried to identify areas where we will or may experience friction. You know, it's hard to say because, you know, like I said, we're focused on the U.S., but in the United States, it's interesting because the government really isn't too involved in transfers. Like, you have to you need to register a transfer with them, but it's really just a matter of taking a document, you know, basically who are the parties, what's the legal description of the property, and they may or may not want to know how much compensation or consideration was provided to make the transfer. And you pay a small fee, and it gets recorded basically on you know, a county's ledger. And you know, there are thousands of counties in the United States, and they can all operate a little differently if they want to. So it's really hard to anticipate where you might have more friction. But, you know, in terms of launching Gokey, basically we're going to concentrate on areas that, you know, for example, I live in Oklahoma, but probably Gokey is first kind of pilot market will be like Denver metro area. because it's more progressive in terms of technology and thinking about these kind of things. So we anticipate a little less friction there. And then also it's right next to Wyoming, which Wyoming is compelling because although they don't have like a major real estate market there, they do, Wyoming is very forward thinking as a state in terms of blockchain, and they legally recognize smart contracts with the same standing as any other contract. So basically we're trying to minimize any friction and stay out ahead of it just by being pretty selective in what markets we're launching in first. But that being said, as a platform, I suppose people from any country or jurisdiction could hop on there and write their own smart contract. And, we don't necessarily have to deal with the friction as much as the parties to the contract. So, not sure if that answers the question, but that's kind of how we're looking at it.
No, those definitely gave me a lot of insight into the way that you're formulating it. With you setting up basically smart contracts, it's basically like you're basically making this a plug and play for people that are looking to purchase property on the blockchain. Is that correct? I just want to make sure I'm getting the gist of it.
Yeah, essentially, so we'll have kind of smart contract templates, sort of a library. Like, hey, in general, is this what you're trying to do? Are you trying to do a lease option? Are you trying to do an owner finance deal? Which I keep going back to those two because those are kind of the core products we're looking at offering first. But so yeah, we'll have kind of a standard template. But say two parties want to do a lease option. It's like, hey, do you want to have a non-smoking provision? Well, then you can add that. You can make minor modifications to the smart contract if you wanted to do that without having to be a developer or Plutus programmer, right? So we're looking at using some outside tooling that basically makes these templates super easy to use, almost like filling in a Google form, but on the back end translates that into the Plutus code that needs to be submitted to the chain.
Shock, you got your hand up?
Yeah, quick question. What is the fee structure that Gokey is implementing? Percentage, flat fee, membership?
Yeah, we haven't really determined an exact fee structure, but we will have like a small platform fee. So like if you want to use our templates to basically design and write and deploy a smart contract through our platform, then there will be a small platform fee to keep the lights on and keep everyone happy. It would, I don't know exactly what it would be, but it would be less than hiring a lawyer and going through the normal channels, much less. And that is actually one of the primary utilities of the Gokey token, which like you could pay your platform fees with a Gokey token and pay maybe a smaller amount than you would if you were to pay with ADA or a stable coin.
So you guys are offering a token, and so there's details around when that's available and when it's yeah.
So the Gokey token is it's available for purchase now. Like if you are anticipating wanting to use it for some type of real estate activity, you can buy that utility token now. It trades at Muesli Swap, Sunday Swap. We're on ADAX, and we'd like to make it available on all the better dexes that pop up on Cardano.
And so it's like depending on what written instrument you're using will depend on how much Gokey tokens they will cost. So if you were just going to say, hey, for example, myself, I'm actually renting a property now, talk to the owner a little bit about crypto, he's totally into it, and say, hey, we can use this smart contract or this crypto platform that ensures that neither of us get ripped off and we save money in the long term. Or, but in order to use that platform, say, would I need like 1,000 Gokey tokens just to make sure that I cover, just if I were to use it for one basic transaction, lease to own?
Yeah, I think the idea, and I might not have captured your question correctly. You sound a little bit muddled on my end, but you would basically pay an initial fee to deploy the contract, but you can also we envision using the token in the future also as kind of a utility to reward and incentivize good behavior of both parties. So, let's say, if the person leasing the property, pays on time per the smart contract every month, then they can get rewards denominated in Gokey deposited into their wallet, like automatically through the smart contract. If the landlord is a good actor and helps take care of the property and things like that, they may earn rewards in Gokey. So basically, like if you're renting a property and you're doing everything right, then you're going to be incentivized and collect rewards in terms of Gokey tokens. And that's important because one of the major founding principles of this project is that 100% of the people we've talked to, and just kind of doing some pretty basic customer type research, is like every single one of them who's been a renter like hates the idea of like renting for 2 years, 5 years, maybe longer, and walking away from the deal with like absolutely nothing, right? So like no opportunities, say for a down payment or anything like that.
Yes, I know paying someone else's mortgage is not fun, but I've been doing that for pretty much 4 years.
It's not. But I feel like, we're at a time and place in the world and technology wise that, maybe there are different, better ways to approach this.
Hey, we got Mo up here.
Hey, Mo.
Oh, hi there. Thanks, pretty cool. Thanks, Gokey. My question is towards, well, I have actually 3 questions. The first one is, when was the idea conceived and when was it like the first initial work towards the project began?
Okay, so let's see. Initially, I think the idea really started to gel about a year ago. I was looking recently, I think in March is when I purchased the domain. And, so I was probably thinking about it, a month or 2 before that. Now, the problem has been percolating in my mind for a long time, especially the problem around people being unable to afford homes, like going back into mid 2020. Very small detail, when the pandemic hit in the city I live in, we came up for re-election of our local mayor, and not a big fan. I'm not a politician. I don't want to be one by any means, but I did say, hey, you know what? I'm going to run for office and I'm going to throw out some pretty radical ideas, or even not so radical ideas, about the direction I think our city needs to probably be headed into the future. And one of the things that kept coming up in these like online forums and discussions and Zoom calls with different advocacy groups was affordable housing. So, that's where I really started thinking about the idea. But, when people are asking in that kind of a context about what I would do about affordable housing as a mayor, like the easy answer, and it's not sufficient, but it's just to say, well, build more housing, maybe adjust zoning a little bit so that there's more land available for more dense construction. But, I would be thinking to myself, like, well, I don't really feel like now is the time to get into how monetary policy is affecting all this and how low interest rates are really pushing investors into the housing market. Investors who aren't going to live in the homes, but are driving people who want to live in the homes out of the market. So that's where that was kind of the catalyst for starting to think about it quite a bit differently. I think we minted the Gokey token back in June. And it was really a little bit timing, kind of trying to think about like, well, it took me a while to determine for sure that I wanted to build on Cardano because we were looking at quite a few smart contract platforms, but Cardano is really checking a lot of the boxes. And so at that time, we were just kind of trying to keep our ear to the ground of like, well, when smart contracts, when all this other stuff. So that's been working on about a year, I guess, is probably the short answer.
Right. The one of the idea, and in that time frame, like up to now, from this year, what early positive traction has a team achieved up to this point? Any minimal viable product, any test of the product? What has been achieved until this moment?
So far, where we thought we would be in terms of technical development has fallen short. And I mean, I don't want to just point fingers at Cardano as a project, but there are things that we thought we would have been able to do by now that we just haven't been able to. Maybe we listened to some of the wrong people or something, but so we've decided to focus on trying to get the word out about the project, about what we're trying to do and why. But we're still so early that we're still in the team building process. Like I still don't think it's too late to potentially bring on like a technical co-founder to the project and some things like that. But man, it's given us a lot of breathing room to have a lot of great conversations with potential partners, other people we want to work with and things like that. So, it's kind of a blessing and curse, but, so far I think we're in a good position to launch a working MVP, once, PAB backend and all of that is ready. And that's according to the people we're talking to about helping us build this, because I'm not a programmer, or at least not a Plutus programmer. And, I have to kind of rely on the experts on some of this stuff. And at this point, we've bootstrapped a lot. We've kind of sold some tokens so that, we can help fund some early stage development. So now we have a little bit of money on the side that we can pay developers and things. So at this point, it's, if you've tried to build on Cardano yet, finding a good Plutus dev can be really tough. So, but we're going to keep working on it.
No, totally. It's one of the prices one has to pay to be an innovator in the space, right? I mean, I do see a lot of the ideas. I do believe it's a necessity. It's a problem that it's sure blockchain might be a good candidate to solve. The reason of the previous question is that I had a question regarding the tokenomics of the project. What was the reason for the amount, especially for at the stage that the project is? I do see that there's a lot of potential, but I do have some doubts that maybe it might have been early for the token release, especially as you mentioned that things are not completely clear. I don't know what's your perspective on it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a great point, and it's very valid. And you know, we kind of went back and forth on like, well, when should we launch a token? And you know, some part of it was like, well, let's go ahead and launch because smart contracts are coming out right away, and we'll be able to build a. Initially, the idea was like, look, we're going to build some very basic smart contract templates on Marlowe, right? I thought everything I read indicated that Marlowe was like pretty close to being usable, and but it wasn't quite there. So you know, we went ahead and launched it, and you know, we had to. Everyone wants to know about the tokenomics, of course. So you know, we basically said, here's what we think it's roughly going to look like, okay? And really, basically, you know, we created a pie chart. I've got some percentages in mind. I've got some in the Excel spreadsheet that we use to make the chart and things like that. But I've tried to always be very transparent. That's to say, hey, look, you know, we're still early. We are very, you know, we're still open to new kind of partnerships and potential co-founders. And so it felt premature to lock in the tokenomics. But one thing that I did know for sure is that I really prefer to stay away from venture capital if I can. I want to make Gokey as public and open as possible. So really, unless you just have your own very deep pockets, like how do you launch something like this without selling tokens or without going out and kind of kissing the ring of all the VCs? I feel like a lot of VCs would be very interested in Gokey, prop tech, fintech, pretty hot spaces right now. But you know, if you don't want to do that, then what's the alternative? That's kind of the general line of thinking behind going ahead and issuing tokens relatively early.
Right. Just following that, you mentioned that there was a question of when should we launch a token. I was wondering also the reason of like why should one launch a token, right? Usually it has some utility or function. What function or advantages does it bring other than using ADA itself on the platform? Other than funding, I guess.
Yeah, no, great question. So, and I haven't been able to touch on this, but it's a really important part of Gokey. So, for a long time, I've been really interested in the concept of sound money and investing in like tangible assets like real estate, right? So, in fact, like when I first heard about Bitcoin back in probably late 2010, early 2011, it was only because I had started becoming interested in precious metals. So I started investing in buying silver dollars. Basically, I just go down to the coin store and fork over my fiat and get essentially silver fiat. But you know, there was a website called coininfo.com, very rudimentary looking website where you could track kind of spot and future prices of all the metals. And there was this like very pixelated ticker that would kind of go across the top all day long, and then would say like Bitcoin, you know, 25 cents or whatever it was. And so, you know, that got me really interested in that. But then I started thinking like, and doing a lot of reading about commodities and all these other, you know, economic concepts. And it was like, you know, it really makes sense like to have different types of money for different types of applications, like because of food price inflation, housing price inflation. It's like, well, why shouldn't we use money that is like pegged to the value of like a basket of food, or somehow, you know, aligned with the housing market? So what we want to do with the Gokey token is essentially we're going to take an index most likely the Case-Shiller U.S. Home Price Index, and try to match through burning and possibly minting Gokey tokens to the price appreciation of that market. So it's not a perfect tool, but it is something that more creates a form of exchange that's more closely aligned with the value of what it is you're trying to buy and sell, because that's a big piece of why people can't afford to buy their first house anyway, because the value of the house is going up, and the value of the dollar relatively is going down or lagging behind, or the fiat that they earn at their job is also falling behind. So we're like, well, let's go ahead and create a token that more accurately tracks that.
Right. I did have a final question, and I'm sorry I've taken I think a lot of time. But the last question is, what are the potential risks do you see in the business model regarding what legal risks might probably come, especially in and if it complies in the applicable laws at the moment? As we know, the space is really undefined at the moment. So how do you prepare for this situation?
Great question. I think probably one of the major risks would be, let's say Gokey and other projects that come out who are maybe like Gokey, maybe they're Gokey on a different chain or whatever. Like, they start seeing a lot of success. Well, what happens if other kind of more traditional players in the finance industry start feeling a little bit left out, like a mortgage broker association or a national association of realtors or something, which, by the way, Gokey isn't necessarily created to work around these people. It could be another tool that could help these, help these parties achieve their goals as well. But, you have to recognize the National Association of Realtors is probably, I think it's the largest trade organization in the United States, and it's huge globally, like the international side of it. So, they could potentially lobby Congress to say, hey, look, you can't let people have their own smart contracts. You need to go through us. We're the only ones you can trust, and things like that. So, looking forward, it could get potentially a little bit messy at some point in the future. But, I feel like, if we let that stuff keep us up at night, and kind of, we could be sort of paralyzed in a way if we worry about that too much. I don't think it's a high risk, but I think, of course, it's regulatory risk is a real thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, all right then. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Mo. You had a lot of questions. It's always good to bring up new stuff, though. Daniel, you got your hand up?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone, or at least where I am. So I'm new to the platform. Just kind of looked at it briefly before requesting speaker, and correct me if it kind of doesn't have a place in what you guys are doing. But I have a few questions. So a couple real life issues I've been involved in real estate. So I had a house, sold it off before COVID. I was concerned like prices were going to down, so sold it off, got into an apartment. But at the time, my partner and I had the house, the deed, and then he had a right by survivorship provision on that deed. So before I could sell my house, I had to have him sign a quitclaim deed, or I couldn't get a real estate agent to take my my case. I can sell the house without getting that documentation signed. So that's one. Two, my mom has always been this back and forth with her sister about the provisions in my grandma's will. She's still alive, but they set it up before her husband died, and then my mom's sister changed it, and then my mom got the will changed back to what it was originally set at. So my question is, for add-on stuff, like let's say something happens and you need to sell a house due to a breakup, or there's land that's tied up in a will that is bound to be disputed. So for add-on stuff like this that's tied to property, do you guys see having a place in that? And how would you handle that type of conflict or dispute resolution in any products that you or your customers might be involved in?
Man, great question. And it's those are real things that happen out there, and they happen all the time, and they're a huge source of disputes. Unfortunately, within families and everything. I've been involved in those myself. So currently, we're keeping things very, very simple. But what you're describing are real estate rights. They're kind of little sticks in the bundle of real estate rights. So like a right of survivorship, or some future ownership right, like something that's in a will. So like, just to make it clear, like, if I'm in my grandma's will and she wants to give me a house, but right now my uncle is living there and he's just a terrible person and he's messing it all up and he's tearing it up, like I have kind of a right to say something about that, so, and that might even, because it's damaging my future economic possibilities, right? Like if he's tearing up a house that I'm supposed to get and he doesn't have a right to do that, then you kind of have to do something about it. But yeah, I definitely see, as we develop and get our heads around this more and work with some great attorneys and some great developers, how we could put together clauses that could be kind of plug and played into these contracts. Because, in something like a quitclaim deed, people don't realize it, but like, they just don't understand really. A lot of people don't really understand exactly what those are and how they work. But, that's something, you and another party could just go down to your county courthouse and file, like get it notarized and file it, right? And like, you don't necessarily have to go through anyone, but if Gokey started down that road, then we start kind of walking a fine line between providing legal services rather than just a simple smart contract platform. So, it's definitely interesting and compelling. I don't know, from a business model perspective, if it would necessarily be lucrative for Gokey, but, we're not 100% in this for the money anyway. We're trying to help people, and that's a real problem people have. So definitely something we would like to look at in the future.
I do appreciate your insight into it. I only bring it up because I know those processes, as long as my grandma's alive, like the two sisters are going to be fighting. It's just what's going on. Like, I kind of stay out of it as the son and grandson, but I know definitely the quitclaim deed. I mean, it was like a small bundle of papers, but it took 3 months. And you're trying to, like, in the rush before COVID as it's ramping up, get it signed, and then trying to think about, like, well, if this doesn't work, any legal remedies to the problem. So, yeah, it's definitely stressful. And if it would somehow be tied into smart contracts and make it easier in terms of just signing it, that would have given me so many fewer headaches. But yeah, I was just kind of curious on your answer. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Good question.
We got DS9 up here. Go ahead.
Hi, subscription. Thanks for letting me up here, and hello, my friends that are in this room. I heard when I hopped in, I heard the big R word, regulation, and stuff to do with some politics. Gokey, sound like you're a smart guy, and subscription is. I was wondering if I can maybe get a little bit of feedback, because I'm going to meet with Trucker Ed. He's head of Senate for New Jersey tomorrow, and I got a couple things that I want to tell him. Mainly sticking to the bill, the America Competes bill, and I was listening to Charles yesterday. I mean, not yesterday, maybe two days ago. The last time that he was really all over the place, and they want to change the voting because a lot of people think that voting went wrong, and you want voting integrity. So Charles was like really really shooting for the stars, and I was like you're lucky if you're gonna get them to get voter ID, like never mind like a quantum blockchain system of voting and stuff like that. But and he's like, talk to them. He's like, maybe you start off with use our system for like uh, for a parade or something like that. Very very small votes, which I'm gonna bring up to him. And also I know that code is we want to not ride till we die, but code is free speech. That's a very powerful statement. And besides starting off small and that, and who's bringing the regulation and who kind of doesn't want it, I was wondering if I get any feedback on something helpful to say to him, and maybe a way how we can all maybe give back, because he does have he has like a radio show, I think, like once a month for I think because of the trucker situation going on in Canada. And yeah, I'm just looking for a little bit of help because it's tomorrow, and even any feedback is helpful for me.
Yeah, man, that's cool. First of all, I'd say good on you for reaching out to your senators and having conversations with them. I mean, not, I mentioned earlier I ran for office once, and it's really only because I believe that there are threats to our democracy, and a lot of it comes from people not getting involved and people just expecting everyone else to do everything for them. So I think that's awesome. And I haven't followed the Voting Rights Act or a lot of other things as closely as I would like to, just because I've been pretty busy with Gokey. And but I can understand how on-chain voting and digital identity, depending on who you're talking to, politician, business person, otherwise, there could be there could be people who think that's a great idea and other people who don't like it because maybe it shifts the balance of power one way or another, whatever. But I feel like one thing that is maybe a great place for all of us to start is suggesting maybe that more states give smart contracts standing, like Wyoming has done, and I think Arizona and maybe New Hampshire or Vermont. Don't quote me on that, but to me that is kind of a business-friendly baby step. I mean, maybe baby step isn't the right word because I feel like it's a pretty big deal, but it is something that I think it's going to be a differentiator. If Gokey moves to a different state, which we're considering reforming Gokey in Wyoming, just because it's got a blockchain-friendly regulatory regime, and I don't think we'd be the last one to do that. So maybe that's a good place to start. And then as they see these crypto blockchain related businesses coming in, surely they're seeing what's happening in Florida and in Miami, places like that. Then they become kind of hearts and minds more open to on-chain voting and things like that.
Can you give me an example of do you know of any smart contracts that are on blockchain or that what you're referring to as being used by, I don't know, the public or the government?
Well, I can't right off the top of my head, but I think basically an example would be like if you and I entered into a smart contract to buy or sell a house or whatever, and if we do that in Wyoming, they're going to look at our smart contract and be like, yeah, this is a valid contract, and it's not just some random thing that people have put together and the court won't even look at it in the case there was ever a major dispute.
Public and private use then. Okay, I got it. I'm gonna look at the Wyoming DAO. I'm aware of that. I'm gonna poke my head in there and see if I can get any tidbits in there, because I don't know, it's the person who can pull the plug is on a non-elected position, who used to work at on Wall Street, connected to those guys. It's
they have a lot of influence, for better or for worse. Maybe too much, but the reality is a lot of those types are the people our politicians listen to, instead of just regular folks like us, or like me. I'm not sure what what you do or your background, but
cool, man. I'm in technology. I'm learning how to code now. That's like the only thing that I don't know how to do.
Cool.
So that's all I want to say. I don't want to take too much time prescription with this. I know it's like a dark cloud.
Thank you. Good luck at your meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming up. I feel like regulation is something that we all have to be thinking about. As much as we hate it, it's going to happen around us, whether we do anything about it or not. So we do need to be out there doing stuff.
Yep.
Thank you.
Rohan, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to DS9. And what if I were meeting with a senator tomorrow, I would talk about how the areas of their districts where real estate is depressed, tokenized real estate is a definite path toward a whole new outlook for housing, and especially low income housing. And there's more details that I could go into, but just that alone, that would pique somebody's interest. And also the prospects of having a repeat of 2008, 2009 would become much, much less, because there's a way to, Gokey has already explained one method of creating a stable coin, basically a stable token based on real estate. And I kind of spell out a slightly different but similar path in the white paper that I wrote. So that's one thing that I would bring up, and that would also increase wealth distribution in the long run. And there is a country, El Salvador, who has become the first country in the world to make Bitcoin legal tender. So the regulatory parts are definitely still have to be worked out, but I completely agree with Gokey. In this environment, we all know that it's unless the bigger boys out there get their way, which people have touched on, that possibility does exist. But come on now, I mean, even though they have a lot of clout financially and organizationally, I really believe that once people realize that they can eliminate a lot of that, I don't think it's any stopping it. So in other words, the regulatory environment, like Gokey said, is going to be tricky, and I can't predict for how long. But I don't think it's going to be another decade. I really don't. So that's what I would talk to the senator about is the fact that it's being adopted worldwide, and it can give some different ways of alleviating income inequality, property inequality and also just property values.
That, Rohan, I'm gonna follow you and stuff now and send you a message in a little bit. I'm gonna go over that. I need to go over that more before I go over that with him, because it just like I
Cool.
can't say we can create a stable coin for the hood, because he's well aware of
Exactly.
he's well aware of that. Like he not I mean not of that of how stablecoin banking, but he does. All my guys care about that stuff a lot.
And that's really interesting, you guys. The aspect of developing or revitalizing entire areas. It's a lot of cities and counties and states. They'll issue like this huge RFP. Like out to the biggest developers and the biggest banks, and like, hey, come build like $100 or $500 million mega projects to revitalize this area. And that's kind of cool, but it's very centralized. Like only a few people can play in that sandbox, right? Whereas, if there's a way to take an approach kind of like what you guys are talking about, sort of democratize the capital raising, which there are crowdfunding avenues and things like that. But it's a compelling idea to look at deeper.
Indeed.
Yes, most definitely, it's worth looking into, because just think about it. If you fractionalize even one property into a million blocks, and then you have, let's say you got 100 properties in in a general, like say 3 neighborhoods in a big city, you got 100 properties, and then you've got 3 other cities with 100 properties, and they're different types of properties. In other words, on the property value spectrum, all of those variables. And so now you can minimize the risk of any investor, because nobody is invested. Even if I own a million blocks, they aren't all in one property. They're spread all over. And so that creates the stableness of the coin or the token.
Yep.
That's interesting. So is this like, it would be like a sovereign fund that grows over time?
Ideally, yes, it would be a sovereign fund, because that way you could have small investors. Literally, you could give people all over the world an opportunity to literally invest $100, maybe even $10 into real estate. And so, like you got a 5-year-old and you're like, well, this guy's going to college. And you put $100 in every year, into real estate, or, whatever. I'm just throwing out numbers, but it becomes an investment vehicle.
That's great. I understand that. That's great. I did hear that before. I heard of this this um you know concept before for that, and I was like excited to really get back at it. So yeah, man, I appreciate that, Rohan. I'm definitely going to say that to him.
Not a problem.
Yeah, Rohan.
I'd be more interested in seeing it implemented. Is why I'm speaking on it. The more people get excited about it, the better. And like I keep saying, of course, I want to be involved. That's why I've got the GitHub and so on. But basically, the bottom line is, let's do it. Damn it!
You guys know you can all buy REITs and like stock and real estate hedge funds and stuff, like $5, $10, $100 at a time, doing the exact thing we're all talking about here, right?
Yeah, but just be careful where you're doing that at, because you got places like BlackRock that are buying dips in communities that are that are that, let's just say, these dips are like handcrafted by like shadow government. Hello.
Whoa, we're getting super tinfoily here. Like, what? BlackRock buys real estate
Not
to
at
turn a
all.
profit. That's
Not at
what
all,
you're
man.
going to do with the DAO, right? I own
Brand.
stock in BlackRock.
Yeah, you're helping destroy us doing that. Look at BlackRock; they're the right-hand man of the Federal Reserve, and then you'll know what they do. Even though they do manage $1 trillion, that's probably what you're looking at. But maybe they'll do like 10 things right and then one thing wrong. I mean, it's up for you to accept that or not.
You don't think like any DAO or who's going to run this thing on the blockchain, you don't think any of them might ever do something just as bad? Like people get in trouble for doing things. Like that's human error. I don't know how you're going to avoid that on the blockchain is my thing.
Everybody's getting into it. I mean, if they get into it now, I think that they'll just give us more validation and power. That's why they're like, they're good at squeezing blood from stones, man. They're gonna squeeze the legacy system rock blood as long as they can.
And so
I mean, I just don't have such a cynical view. Like, as a guy who came up literally out of the mud growing cannabis, like literally paid for my college growing and selling cannabis, like, and owns real estate, I don't have like such a cynical view. Like, I actually appreciate the mortgages and like the lending that was able to happen for me and things like that. And like, I understand the requirements and that are necessary. And like, it just seems like, I don't know, I just find it really funny. Like, I don't understand like how we're going to like reinvent the wheel but not have the same issues. Like the reasons mortgages have requirements they do and banks ask for certain things is because they don't want you to default, and they're trying to make it a sound investment for their investors, and you too can be that investor. Like, I'm invested in JP Morgan Chase. Like, I own a part of the NASDAQ. Like, I don't think tinfoil hatting people away from general investments that are good is a good way to go about it. Like, that's just not at all the right thing to do. Like, people should be invested in the stock market and in cryptocurrency and things like that. And to like tinfoil hat drive people away from traditional investing, I just think is just a really bad road to go down.
And so what do you think was traditional prior to the stock market and mortgages? And I'm not saying that was better or anything, but the point I'm making is that we don't know an alternative, and nobody on the planet does. And so we have an opportunity because of technology to create a new path that leaves fewer people thrown along the side of the road. Because I don't disagree with you. Yeah, those options have become available literally only in the last decade. So it's not like everybody's had the opportunity to put $100 into a REIT.
Mortgages have been around for hundreds of years. The stock market has been around for over 100 years. REITs and real estate controlled vehicles have been around for over 100 years. Like,
and who came up with those vehicles and mechanisms? People that had power, people that already had money. And so,
right, but you're like villainizing these traditional methods of wealth generation, right?
Well, just be open to something new. That's all. I'm not saying.
I'm open. I'm here. I'm just hearing a lot of like idealization and not a lot of like real gut fact of how we're going to get there and what we're actually changing.
And that's why we're having the discussion. I think Gokey has made that plain. I have a white paper that I don't have all the answers for. So that's what I'm saying. We have to be open to other possibilities in this world. Otherwise, we just end up in the same place. And if we take everything from this world into it's a platform. It's not a new world. Somebody was very astute to point that out to me yesterday. They said it's not a new world. It's not a new world because we are building it, and we can't help but to take part of what we know and who we are into that world. So that's okay. However, because we have a new opportunity, let's explore the possibilities and not get stuck in traditions that work for a small amount of people. And God bless you. You have been.
What do you mean a small amount of people? Well, that's where I don't understand this. Like, all of these methods we have work for people. Like, who?
No, they don't.
What are we talking?
They work
Because-
on the surface, but people are stressed out. People are not doing what they do the best because
I think that's a lack of education, because these opportunities are out there and people need to be educated about how they're out there for them. That's where I say, like, you can get invested in real estate right now, today. You don't need to gamble on some crazy thing on the blockchain. Like, you could start earning dividends in real estate today with $10 and the
right,
Robinhood app.
that mechanism doesn't help a community rebuild itself. And what we're presenting is the possibility that there are methods that of using the blockchain that would allow communities to be rebuilt, for more people to participate in real estate ownership. So I'm not saying that system is going to go away. It might, but it might take a while because of the fact that people do have a problem looking beyond what's in front of them. So I just ask everybody to always step outside of what you see and allow the possibilities of what you can't, because that's where the growth is. That's where the opportunities manifest.
Yeah, if your glass is full, if your glass is full, you're not going to get anything else to fill it if you can't accept anything else.
Exactly.
And, right, and a big thing is a lot of times I think I might be hearing a lot of like this thing like, oh, we have to fix the whole picture all at once. No, we can't do that yet. I mean, if you can, more power to you, I'll tell you. But I think that, chipping away at the old block is a really, really good thing, and making as many improvements, small improvements, like that's what I mean by chipping away at the old block. We can't fix the whole. We're not going to be able to fix all of our problems here, education, you name it, but we can fix a little bit at a time, and then maybe we'll start, instead of fixing smaller amounts of people indoctrinating this and helping each other, then maybe more groups will be getting involved, the same way how, like, some really big crypto holding companies are starting to, like, buy ADA and stuff like that.
Yeah, I love you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to gain a little clarity on what I was hearing from Rand Corp. When you say gambling on the blockchain, can you elaborate on that so I can get a little bit better understanding? Because from my perspective, and I might be taking this out of context, but isn't everything in life a gamble?
Is what? I'm sorry. What was your question? I didn't hear. I couldn't hear
You
it.
said something about gambling on the blockchain. Like, I just wanted to gain a little bit of clarity on, allow you to clear up your statement on that, because, like, essentially, like every day we do something is a gamble. Like, nothing is a guarantee.
Everything is a calculated and educated risk. You can take gambles that have bad odds, but everything is in your life is a calculated risk. And I would suggest, if you want to invest in real estate, finding a much cheaper method and traditional method to get in right now before buying tokens on the blockchain that have no way to tie to traditional, like how your county auditor, how do they do title? Like right now, I've looked into plenty of real estate plays, both on Ethereum and Cardano. And the only way to do it is to put real estate into an LLC and then try and tokenize the real estate equity. And even then, you have a bunch of issues. So, like, I get it. I love having the ideal thoughts. I love having the conversation. I just don't think, like, pitching the purchasing of tokens or any of this is, like, healthy. Like, I just don't think it's that healthy. I think it's an extreme gamble. And if you really want people to come up, quote unquote, out of the hood, as I've been hearing here, the best way would be to help them take more educated guesses where they can lift themselves out one by one personally, where people can learn how to save and earn dividends today and help themselves pay the bills instead of asking them to take this immense gamble where we all know 99% of the time those things don't work out. That's why you buy stock in something like BlackRock or a huge fund that takes those gambles for you and uses proper bankroll management. As Gokey and some other people had said, like they were poker players, proper bankroll management and bet sizing is the most important thing. And to just ape in if you're, in a position where you don't have a lot of money, you're living month to month, to just totally ape into something that's completely a gamble might not be the most financially responsible thing to do or to be teaching people. And while we're here, like selling tokens to something that's totally not fleshed out, no full GitHub or anything like that, like it's, it starts to throw a lot of red flags in my mind personally.
We get the point. The thing is that we're here to support the few people that are here to support and are interested in what Gokey has to offer. Sure, it may seem like a gamble to you, but I'm ready for a change. I want to see a change. I'm not interested in investing into any of these big, huge institutions. I'm interested in the little guy. And that's what, to me, what Cardano is about. So, we're not going to go out there and educate little guys and say, hey, spend $10 on BlackRock. We say, hey, get invested in Cardano and then see what goes from there. And sure, Gokey doesn't have all the answers, but it sounds like he's done a lot of research and a lot of
Dude, I get that. I understand that. Don't get caught up on BlackRock. There are good companies you can invest in. Like, come on now, right? Do we hate the whole world?
How BlackRock buys up, how BlackRock really works on how they get their properties that they own.
They buy them. I used to work for a firm. I was a wholesaler in real estate. We sold property to people, large funds. Have you heard of American Homes for Rent? That's a stock you can buy. That was a client of mine. They're a hedge fund. I was the realtor. We would literally just fire off offers on every house that hit the market, and they would overpay and buy them. That's what they would do. And you know why? Because they have a lot of money. They have enough money that they can buy them, and they know that if they hold them for 10 years or rent them out or whatever they do with them, they're going to make the profit. And that's like the ability that people have when they have a lot of capital, when capital comes together. So like, while we hate BlackRock now, what we're discussing is how we make the next BlackRock in the new paradigm. So like, that's the thing is like, you hate everybody when they're big, but like you love them when they're small. Like you got to find where's that line, where is somebody too big? You know what I mean? Like, and are there good companies out there you can invest in? Like there has to be a quality company. Come on now, that's flipping houses that or owns rental property or something that you can invest in. Like forget BlackRock. Let's not get caught on the one bad name that does have some like scuffs in their history. Like I get it. Like,
All right. And this is a good discussion and it's really interesting and things like that. But definitely on here, like this platform, we're not advocating for anybody to ape into anything or do anything crazy. We're mostly just here to have a conversation about, things that are working or things that are in the works on Cardano. So let's not get too ahead of ourselves and saying that people are aping in, and especially in this platform right here, well, mostly it's just Cardano people. We're all just discussing use cases and things like that. So we're just going to kind of bring things back because we're getting ready to wrap up, and we'll talk to Gokey here, and we'll get ready to kind of end this. But this is a really great discussion. Gokey, are you there? Yeah, I'm not sure if Gokey had to step away. I was trying to DM him also, so he might be having some phone issues at the moment.
Let Ronan talk.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. So I mean, just to kind of bring it back full circle to what Gokey's trying to do. I mean, I get the argument about investing in real estate and big companies that own and manage real estate, and I get REITs. I understand how they operate, but they were really designed to solve a problem for investors. Like what Gokey is trying to do is primarily solve a problem for people who want to buy a home. And the fact is that because of certain conditions in financial markets, huge hedge funds, publicly traded, privately sponsored. These projects are going out and outbidding people for single family homes, and people who want just to buy their first home and have kind of equity in the home that they in the roof they live under are getting outbid by the BlackRocks of the world. So great for the investor class, but not so great for people who are trying to just kind of take care of their family. So just kind of want to draw that that line there, I guess.
Isn't that just capitalism, though? Like, how do we solve that on the blockchain? How do we solve the bidding war on the blockchain?
Like, the problem with capitalism is, and we all know it, right, is there's not enough transparency. And this is why we have such a problem. Because let me tell you, if things were transparent and you can actually follow and trace the money, a lot of things, companies such as BlackRock probably wouldn't be standing entities. And that's just
But how do we solve the bidding war? How does transparency solve a bidding war? Like, if I have $100 more to pay than you do, how are you going to ensure fairness? Like, what is the fairness that we're trying to ensure there? You know what I mean? Like, how do we solve the bidding war between big companies or big protocols, blockchain protocols that want to buy real estate? How do you solve that from outbidding an individual?
I love your questions, and I would love to engage you to discuss, because that's how things get solved, is you start discussing them. So that's an excellent question, and that's the kind of thing that I'm sure Gokey and myself and everybody in here who's interested in either side, that's what we want to solve. And I completely agree with Gokey. What you're talking about is great for investors who have
I'm asking Gokey. Hold on, Rohan. How does Gokey solve, like you're saying, you want to help individuals buy houses? How do you help solve the problem of out-competing big other buyers in general?
Well, for one,
it's a good question and valid question. But let me just say, like, there are home sellers out there who kind of see what's happening in the market, and they're not super excited about it, and they're maybe not worried about getting $1,000 or $2,000 more for their house.
Exactly.
Maybe they want to help someone buy their first house. I mean, and so Gokey is creating a platform to let them transact peer-to-peer securely, transparently on chain, and that's the core of what we're getting at. Now, you know, there are going to be sellers out there who just were like, hey, I'll sell to BlackRock instead of this young family. And you know what? Kind of sucks, but whatever, good for them. I'm a free market guy. I do think there should be some guardrails to promote some level of fairness, because frankly, if hedge funds own all the single family homes in the world, or, you know, that's an extreme example, but that's not good.
Okay, I own a rental property. I want to sell it. Why am I using Gokey? Like, if I have an individual that I want to sell my house to, like, and I want to give them a deal, or we want to do a contract, why aren't we personally putting together a contract? Why is Gokey getting paid for the contract or anything? That just seems like you're a lawyer. You're another middleman, right? Like, it's just enough. Like, what is the need for Gokey for two individuals to make a deal on a piece of property? What's my need there? Are you a charity then? Are you like a real estate charity? So, like, if I want to ensure my home goes to an individual and not a corporation, I'm going to be like, I want to list my property with Gokey so that I know it goes to an individual. Is it like a brokerage?
No, it's not a brokerage. Not at all. So look, think of it this way. Like, if you and I knew each other, like, we would probably feel very comfortable sitting down and hammering out some kind of owner financing deal or something like that, right? As a seller, I might want to owner finance to you and like earn a higher yield instead of just taking a lump sum and, you know, putting in a CD or something where I might get a much lower return. And that's okay. You don't necessarily have to be on a blockchain for that. But what if we don't know each other? What if we're strangers? Like, people aren't typically going to do that. And
I sell real estate to strangers all the time with personally written contracts. I just want to put that out there.
Okay, man, I've been a broker too. I get it. So, but I see all this as a continuum, right? Like, you know, in the 70s, LLCs were created. In the 90s, REITs were created. And the industry is evolving. And there's nothing wrong with having new tools that solve different use cases.
I agree. I'm just trying to understand what the tool is. So it seems like this is a contract, like a way to immutably write contracts, and you're going to provide like blank contract kind of, I don't know, styles for real estate, whether that be like a lease to own, a purchase, or just a general lease contract that people could then tailor to their personal needs and file on the blockchain.
Essentially, yes.
So it's a contracting service for real estate.
It's a platform for people to come write their own contracts.
Got it. That makes sense. That's a lot clearer to me. Got it.
Yeah, so all the other stuff that we were talking about was just discussion, and we were talking about concepts. And you know, when you vision, it's always good to vision the pie in the sky vision. And so that's what we were doing, I guess, when you came in the room. And I still would love to have those conversations, because those are good questions, and those are going to be some hard barriers to break, to get people to understand that there can be multiple markets, and there could be people that opt out of the market that you're talking about. Like Gokey said, I mean, there are many. We can't even name all the reasons why there will be individuals who will opt out of that and opt into this. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
No, I just had a question about whether this is a one piece in a larger ecosystem or what could be one piece in the bridging ecosystem between the DeFi world and the traditional finance world, and that these contracts could then be used and referenced in securitizations that would be, more streamlined use of the technology than is currently, the manual processes of buying and selling real estate. So maybe if it's back, we can get to it.
I definitely agree with that, Matthew. Like, like this could be one step in the path. If people start using the contract on the blockchain and then it starts becoming like submissible in court and things like that, it's one step to actually getting counties and states to start recognizing title on the blockchain and mortgages on the blockchain and all that fun notes and stuff that comes with that.
Yeah, so I think, definitely deeper in the conversation we got at the end, where we were starting with what Gokey was actually doing. And we'll see if we can get him back up here, and we'll actually start wrapping this up.
Didn't mean to come in so hot. I just hear all the ideals and I'm like, whoa.
Keeping track of title and land, where the land actually exists on Earth is something that Charles talked a lot about Africa, because and also that happens a lot in a decent place to maybe go where there's more integration of technology would be the Dominican Republic. Let's say if you buy a house over there or something like that, and you come back to America, and you come back a year later, your deed is changed and there's a whole new family living there.
All right, Gokey, are you back?
Yeah, I am. Sorry, I got rugged again.
No problem. Yeah, but we're going to go ahead and start wrapping up. So if you just want to put out any last info, or where they can find info about Gokey, or if they want to, look into your token, where they can find info about that.
Yeah, you bet. And thanks for having me. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Lively discussion, and let's keep it going. As Twitter Spaces starts to stabilize a little bit, I do want to host like a weekly space just to talk about blockchain and real estate. So I hope you'll all consider joining for that. But more information right now, Gokey.network is our URL. There's a light paper version 1 on there, just to give you general look, but that's probably due for an update. And we do sell the Gokey token at Muesli Swap and Sunday Swap. So, man, just really excited to be on this journey with everyone. Thanks for all the DMs. Looking forward to working with you all. So, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for coming. You were like one of the first people that showed up when we started Cardano RealFi, and we were looking forward to hearing more about your projects as we're building, and I'm sure we'll hear from you again. But this has been Cardano RealFi. I do these Sunday and Tuesday. Next Sunday, we will have the Cardano DeFi Alliance here. I don't know which members are coming, but yeah, so if you have questions about that stuff. If you want more info about real estate, I'm sure you can just DM Gokey, and I'm hoping he does a space, yeah, definitely ahead of time, because a lot of people want to talk about real estate and changes that we can make to it all. You can go ahead and join our Discord if you want more info on any projects, or if you want to talk about liquidity and yield farming and all that stuff, because we do talk about DeFi here also, and I know people are still kind of confused on how that works out. You can find the Discord link in my profile. But yeah, thanks everybody for coming out. There were a lot of good questions. There was a lot of good discussion. And I'll see you all next week.
Thanks, Sub. Have a great day, man.
Thanks, guys. Be good.